Two for 150. Yep.
I don't need more than
So
one.
you only need one?
Less than one, actually, just for make some for me.
Yeah, so it's 75 cents.
That's all right.
There you go.
What are you gonna do with the second one? I'll throw it away.
You can plant it.
I don't think that works.
Make some more.
All right. Hey, bro, wanna take this cilantro?
And in the summer, one time in the summer, about 4 or 5 years ago, there was a man, had a stand, maybe about as wide as from here to here, not big, and he had no awning over him. He had peaches, and it was so hot they were all cooked. I mean, there ought to be something they could do for that. Maybe you get to charge more if they're cooked. I don't know.
Working the summers down there was a very difficult thing. Rent stands downstairs, of refrigerations downstairs. If you had berries or things that were very, very susceptible to the heat, strawberries, blueberries, those kinds of things would die in the sun very quickly. The summer months were hot. I mean, it was really difficult. And you had a lot more product to get rid of because the terminals were pushing more product on you to get rid of it, because the growing season was in full bloom.
Like summer very hot, and sometimes I give good stuff, hot. Yeah, Mariam. I family, because in the summer, sun very hot and the weather very hot. My stuff almost 1 hour, 2 hours, bad, because of weather.
When I came to college at Harvard in 72, 73, I lived in one year I lived in a cooperative, and so we would all, since we had to make a meal once every month or so, we got our bags together and we would take the trolley down to Haymarket. That's how I first discovered it existed, because all students know that if you get there on Saturday at 4, around 4, 3 or 4, you can get a huge amount of potatoes, tomatoes, corn, cheese. But anything, they're just trying to get rid of all the produce, so you can get sort of like 5 pounds for $1. So that's when we would do our shopping, and we'd go down on the subway.
I was living in Brookline with roommates, and they said, let's go to the Haymarket and shop, it's cheaper, because none of us had any money. And so we would come down and we'd carry home bags of stuff.
I do this every time. I walk through the whole market to see what's in, from where, how, because it's often the same produce. And then I walk back into the light and buy as I go up towards the north, towards the fish. I always buy my fish last. They know me. I don't care what fish it is. I just say, just give me the freshest.
You never know what's going to happen. I was walking through there one summer day. This is maybe 3, 4 years ago. Black man came up to me and he said, "Hi, how are you?" Gave me a big hug and a kiss and left. And Otto was there and who's that? I don't know.
I'm from Egypt. I'm come from almost 2008. I have good stuff. I have grapes. I have good grapes. I have good strawberry. I have a good blueberry. I have banana. I have good stuff. I have good price too. I like my customer. I like the Haymarket. I like my job.
How I started? Well, I used to work at the meat market across from where I'm working right now. And I used to help my grandma since I was 8 years old. And then I started working with my father, which is a couple stands over. And then I started opening my own probably like 7 years ago. And then I was at a few places. I was where the fish place was. And then I moved probably like 2 more spots, and then I ended up over here. So this is the longest I stayed over here. My stand, I usually have about 3 to 4 people, mostly family, sometimes friends.
My family actually hailed out of the West End of Boston. My grandfather and grandmother were the first that worked at the Haymarket Square. That was going back a long time ago. My involvement started when I was a child, maybe 6 or 7 years old, going down there with my father, who sold string beans and tomatoes off of a pushcart. So I would hear stories that went back even before that. We basically had stationary stands back then. My grandfather sold olives and cheeses off of a stand. He had an olive factory in the old West End. And my father had another stand down the street. So as a child, I got to hear stories about how this all began. At that point in time, the stands, I said, were stationary. My father and grandfather would tell me stories as to how when it was a farmer's market, they would have to stand over by Faneuil Hall with their push carts filled with product. Police officers would have everybody lined up, and at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, the sound of a gun would go off, or a whistle, I don't recall which, and all these gentlemen would rush across the street, some of them spilling their product, but rushing to find a good spot in the middle of Blackstone Street to sell their product for the day. Those were stories I heard of. I had never seen that. The policing was done by the individuals. We didn't need any government agency to tell us where our spot was. There was either a line on a asphalt, or there was a hammer and nail put into a slab of granite where you knew your wheel would be. And God forbid that wheel was over by an inch or two, you had a problem with your neighbor. So those spaces were monitored within inches of each other. I mean, within inches. Everybody knew where their space was. If you wanted to hear an argument or two, show up there around 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning, you'd occasionally hear 2 of the vendors arguing with one another as to who might be taking a little bit more space than usual. And I mean a little bit by inches. We're not talking about feet or yards.
Okay, it's quite a story. I was put in a home when I was young, and I was at the home for Italian children in Jamaica Plain on the Jamaica Way. So one weekend, I forget how it transpired. We didn't go to school or something like that, and I wasn't allowed to go home. And I was kind of mad, and the next day, I kind of took off and made my way to Forest Hills and jumped the turnstile, got on the train, and when I got to Haymarket, I didn't know what to do. And I kind of wandered down there, and I seen one of my friends, and a guy says, "What's the matter? Is he lost?" He says, "Yeah, he's lost, but he's my friend and so-and-so's." But anyway, I forget how it happened. I was like 8, 9 years old. He told, get him a slice of pizza and a soda, and he told me, "You sit over there." He came over and talked to me. He goes, "Okay, you sit here for the day." And that night he took me home. Then the next day, he had the Department of Social Services at his house to take me back. And then from that weekend on, I was down Haymarket for the rest of my life. I want to say it was like 1970, 1971. So I went down there the following week, and I started to work. And then I started hooking school on Fridays because I wanted to get the both days in. But I was like a 9-year-old kid making $35 for 2 days, working down there. One of us would work behind the stand cleaning oranges. We sat there all day with a bucket of water, a rag, put the rag inside the water, wring it out, and wipe off the dust off the oranges, because if one turned bad and you dropped the box, the powder would kind of go on the other ones. So I cleaned hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of oranges. And the customers used to say, aren't you supposed to be in school? And I used to tell them, no, I got special permission to be down here.